knowing our folks out
Well,
at the work, the Brethren Hill, right? Kudos for doing it, and that's wonderful. I think though, practically in an election like this, our poll workers are going to be stretched really far just with their basic duties, and I think that while that is exceptional and wonderful, I think that is the sort of thing that cannot be expected of any of our poll workers. If it happens, I think that that's great and that's wonderful.
Well, then we
but
can
I think
do
they're
that,
going to be quite busy all on their own.
Right.
We started doing it.
We can't jump the line for them. We can just give them comfort. But we can't.
We've given them, but sometimes if you ask somebody if they'll let them, you know, do you mind if this person steps out of line and sits down? And will you let them back in?
Sure.
Most people, if you say.
Right, most people are not going to say
no.
no.
Let her die on the spot.
No, please have her go out. I will say two other quick things. Number one is just an update on the challenge from the ACLU and several other organizations. I think it's out in the papers now that we're expecting a decision sometime in the middle to the end of July. I'm sorry if I missed that part. The Republicans wanted September, we wanted 2 weeks ago, I think that the judge in the case, I don't know where, I think it's actually in the Lehigh Valley somewhere where it was brought. I think that they said, okay, we'll split the difference. It's going to be sometime in July, and it's not going to be like a 6-week decision process. The case is going to be argued, and then in a matter of like a week, he or she is going to say, great, here's the deal. We'll at least know what we're working with in a matter of a couple of weeks. I forgot what else I was going to say. But if I think of it, it is completely. The other thing is, and I say this all the time, is that if, and I've been to quite literally 1 million of these meetings. We've had several of them in Berks, we've had like 8 of them in Lancaster, and we've had a couple of them, and we talk about it all the time here. And I would say just as also speaking with voters and running into people from all walks of life on a daily basis in my job, that if I were a voter that might think to try to get an ID, that if they were sitting in one of these meetings, they would probably be scared out of their minds and would never try. I know we're getting all of the answers here, and in a meeting like this, it's certainly okay to really go, oh my gosh, this is really bad, and all of those things. But it is again completely within our control. We have that 2% of the population, registered population, that doesn't have the ID. We can easily scare 5 to 10% of the people into thinking that they're going to get deported if they go vote by just raising our hands and going in the media and going, oh my gosh, and voting ID, and it's going to be horrible, and don't even go to PennDOT because they're going to charge you $1 million and all of those things. Not saying that's happening, but we have it totally in our control to either really go, oh my gosh, and like freak people out when we're talking to them about it, or being calm and collected and saying it's really easy to get that ID, it's really easy to go vote, just as easy as it ever was, and don't worry, we'll be there with some food and water and stuff like that if there's a long line. So vote, it's really easy. And I think that's another thing that we're going to constantly put out as we talk to voters, is really being as calm as humanly possible and saying it's as easy to vote, it's as easy to get the ID as it ever was. And not, because we can easily bump that percentage up and double or triple it if we're really going out there and people get word that we're freaking out about it. So that's something as well that I always try to give perspective on whenever we have a discussion about this. But, yes.
I guess I hear what you're saying, but at the same time, inside I'm saying, but it sounds like you're saying that every vote doesn't matter, and it does.
Oh, every vote does. Without a doubt, it absolutely does. I will say, from the campaign perspective, we have started to ease off of the voter ID ask. One of the reasons why is because there are lots of other organizations, as well as actual government officials, who are working on the ID issue as far as education, and whenever you're out and about, you're telling everyone as well. There is only one group that is going to register the number of voters that we are, and persuade voters to vote for Democrats, and then run the turnout operation to make the turnout as high as it can be, and that's us. We need to make sure that we do that as best we possibly can because no one else is going to do it for us, which is why we're easing back on the voter ID stuff ever so slightly, and let other organizations that cannot persuade voters and will not turn out voters for us to do that and handle education and handle that very small percentage of people that are affected. In Philadelphia, for example, the campaign can basically be hands-off as far as I know because the NAACP, the ACLU, they're in there and they're going crazy and they're really handling that. In other areas such as Schuylkill County and probably in Lebanon, there's probably a much smaller, less vocal presence of outside organizations working with this. So we might have to move the bar a little bit as far as what we do in certain areas where outside groups are not helping and things like that. But yeah, so by all means, every single vote does matter, but I care just as much about the voter that we never get around to turning out to the polls because we spend so much more time than we might need to on the people that don't have the ID. And there will be many, many fewer people who won't vote that probably would have if we spend a disproportionate amount of time on such a small percentage of the voting population. So that's my only point, that I do care about every vote, and that's why I'm so gung-ho about voter registration. We need all the help that we can get. And that's, I care very, very deeply, but I can actually empower more people to vote by really focusing on people staying in line and turning out more voters than wouldn't, and persuading more people to vote for the president. It'll have a lasting impact as we persuade them this year, then they will stay Democrats for many, many years.
And then
Can I just interject something?
Sure.
And I apologize for this. I'm extremely uncomfortable being in on your strategy sessions here, sort of as a government official. So I guess what I would ask, and I don't mean to cut it short, but I mean, if you have any questions for me, I certainly want to answer it, but I don't think it's beneficial for me. I don't, think that it's beneficial for you to have somebody completely on the outside in this group. I'm just not very comfortable with it. So, I mean,
Totally
but
fair.
I guess and this is just information I don't need to know, you know what I mean? So, I mean, I guess what I was asked is, I don't want to run your meeting, but I mean, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to address them, but I really I'm not
And you
comfortable
have a
being
family
in
at
the room
home.
for, well, I mean, that's, I do, but that's fine, so, everybody does. But, no, I don't mean to cut it short, I just, if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer them, but I don't want to.
I apologize.
I don't know what
A few
you're
minutes
no,
late.
I
didn't
know
hear
that.
your
That's
title or position
No,
or whatever.
that's no problem.
I assume Democratic headquarters might as well, but I apologize for that.
No,
Are you
Sorry,
expecting
featured
anybody
speaker.
else from the state to have any more guidance for you between now and November? Or do you feel like you know everything that you're going to find out?
No, I certainly don't know everything that I'm going to find out. And as I've said, the fact that the Department of State has really tried to do well in when we shoot them an email, being open and responding in the next few days. I know that it is their hope that by the end of August, that I think by that point, everything there is to know, they hope, is out there to those of us at the county level.
Right.
I think that is their goal. But are we there? By no means are we there. We don't expect to be yet.
Do you think there's a possibility of extending the September 12th deadline?
I can't even speak to that, outside of my purview, honestly.
It seems a little arbitrary.
I can't speak to it, honestly.
Sure.
Outside of my purview, like I said.
And I assume you don't have a parallel connection with the DMV. You have to work up through the state and down.
I mean, that's correct. It doesn't even make sense for us to go to the DMV because, that's a completely different area that thankfully the Department of State has been able to work with to hopefully use all the information that is at the state. But yeah, I think the Department of State would be the right avenue for any sort of, I think if I called, the DMV, they'd say, why should we care? And I don't blame them,
Do you know if the DMV has a handout from the Department of State?
I don't know, but I've been told that there has been communication between the two the two departments, but I don't know the details of that,
Sure.
Steve.
Okay.
Yeah.
It might be interesting if someone were to test it out, go to the DMV as a person who and see what difficulties actually will find out because they
Or not, or how smooth the process is,
Exactly.
potentially,
Exactly, because then people are more likely to blame you than the DMV.
I think that's something an investigative reporter would do, like on WGAL.
You would think somebody would
Ben
do it.
Cimino used to do. I'm trying to think of Matt Belanger, I think is the current young man. Be a great segment for him to do. Unless they changed again. I think, thank you, Nick.
Oh,
It sounds
hey,
like we
it's
come to
my
a
pleasure.
natural close here.
Yes,
Okay, and again, I mean, I don't mean to cut you off, I just, accumulates then.
right.
For what it's worth, when I send the results into Harrisburg, not because I distrust Harrisburg, but because I think it's a responsible way to check yourself, I always ensure that then they show up on their website
Yes.
that's specific to Lebanon County,
Right,
matches up with what I
Now,
sent.
does everyone do that?
Well,
Because that's what I-
67 counties, I'm not going to,
No, but I mean,
Speak
you're
for them,
saying
you
they
know.
decide they don't like the results out of Philadelphia. Would they say, oh, there really were 50,000 fewer that voted, and I'm putting in here?
I mean,
Well, I'm sure Philadelphia checks them.
I don't have any reason to think that anything untoward is going on in Harrisburg. And like I said, because I double check things going into Harrisburg, not because I distrust them, but because I want to make sure, I guess I'm a little old school that what I see on paper I trust, what I send via the internet, I want to make sure that everything is getting there, so it's sort of an anal retentive part of my nature,
No,
I
it's
suppose.
good practice
But,
to trust but verify.
But that's what I'm saying, and that's always matched up one-to-one.
Yeah,
So-
there's always a possibility that
I'm
it
sure
got
it has in the
input wrong.
past. I'm sure it has in the past.
I mean, there's a number of steps along the way that need to be verified, quite honestly, and that's just one of them. And we do try and exercise that oversight to the best of our ability. So,
Now, you also don't have machines that can be as easily tampered as some of the kind of counties that have the,
But they'd still be tampered with on the county level.
What?
They'd still more likely be tampered with on the county level if they could be tampered with than they would on the state.
I don't know. I mean, they've shown to be able to be tampered at a remote location. I'm not talking, this county fortunately got more foolproof system, but others didn't.
I very much like our
Yeah.
system. I think we have quite a good system for a number of reasons.
Even the mechanical machines that we used to have would jam and things, and
Absolutely.
they were not
I know
prone,
that.
exempt from error.
Sure.
And so I don't think that those kinds of things are any worse now than they were before, in my humble opinion.
Sure.
And I was there to help
I
purchase the
know you
machines.
were, believe
so,
me.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
So I don't know if it's time to begin. I'm guessing it's
I
about
think that we
7:30.
should, it is 7:30, and we should start even if more people come.
Okay, I mean, I want to do this in a way that's helpful for you all. I'll just give out, perhaps you have seen this already, perhaps you have not. You can get this by going to the Pennsylvania Department of State website. I'll just pass this around. They have a number of information sheets, basically frequently asked questions, and I'm giving you one that is just sort of the basics of the photo ID bill. This and other frequently asked question sheets can be found on their website. It's www.votespa.com. There's some more detailed information on student IDs, like nursing facility IDs, things like that that are even a little more detailed than what's on there. So I encourage you to take a look at that. I think it's helpful. Like I said, I want to have this be as profitable to you all as it can be. If you think that is just sort of a, for lack of a better way of putting it, a gap session where it's kind of free-flowing Q&A, that sort of thing, I'm fine with that. If you want me to give sort of a brief overview and then go into that, it's whatever is most helpful for you all. I mean, any suggestions?
Well, if you wanted to give the brief overview, because we all have a lot of questions.
Okay. Well, and one thing I want to point out is, heaven knows I'm not an expert on this law, and I'm not even going to try and impersonate an expert on. The Department of State in Harrisburg helps to interpret the law that the legislature passed, and so we are trying to work as much as possible in concert with them to not only answer questions that we may have, but hopefully to iron out some of the aspects of the law that may not be as clear as other parts. And so whatever questions you may have that I can't answer, I mean, I brought along my own thing to take notes on. I'm going to take those questions to the Department of State, hopefully be able to come back to you folks who are really on the front line of dealing with folks in the community and be able to give you some hard and fast answers so that you can do your job, okay? An overview of this law, I'd say even if you look at that front page of that 6-page handout that I gave you, the thing to keep in mind about the photo IDs at the poll is that all IDs must contain the following items: the name of the voter, photo of the voter, and here's the thing that's important to remember and easily overlooked: a current expiration date on the ID as well, unless an exception is provided below in that listing, okay? So if it doesn't have name, photo, and an expiration date, that's not good. Even if it's from what would seem to be an acceptable source, okay? So keep that in mind: name, photo, current expiration date. It's believed, and I think this is a good belief, that the vast majority of IDs that are going to be shown are driver's licenses, and probably number 2 on that list are going to be photo IDs issued by PennDOT, but not driver's photo IDs. Basically, just, general IDs. If you'll notice, the one exception with that is a driver's license or a PennDOT photo ID. Actually, they can be expired for up to 1 year and still be considered valid. That's one of the great big expiration date exceptions. I don't know why it is set up that way, but it is, okay?
Are the non-photo IDs 4 years like regular driver's license?
You mean the non-drivers
Yes.
photo IDs?
Yes.
They look very similar, except it says like identification card instead of driver's license
Are they
on it.
valid for 4 years like a driver's license?
I would assume so. That would ultimately be a question for PennDOT, I think. Is that what it is for a driver's license? 4 years?
I
I'd have to
think
look.
it's
I'd have
4
to look at
years,
my
yeah,
own to know
I
that.
think so.
I would imagine that it's the same length of time. You also see a U.S. passport is acceptable ID. U.S. military IDs. I can't imagine we'll see many of these, but if we do, an active duty individual or retired military individual may actually have an expiration date that says it's indefinite. Employee photo identification from federal, Pennsylvania state, Pennsylvania county, or Pennsylvania municipal government. So in other words, if I have photo ID, I have county photo ID. Okay, it says County of Lebanon, so you know that it's one of these types of county government, okay? It has my name, so far so good. It has my picture. There's one problem. It doesn't have an expiration date. And so although this is from an authority that may issue IDs, it doesn't have all the aspects that it needs to have, and this would not be acceptable on. Interject something on that. The Department of State, in their interpretation of the law, has said that a sticker may be applied to it, designating an expiration date as long as the sticker is issued by the same ones who issued the ID. So in other words, technically, not saying that the county wants to do this or whatever, but the county or a college, even if it doesn't have it originally, it could issue a sticker that says expires 12/12 or something like that. Put it on there, it would be valid. And the other thing to keep in mind is school districts do not fall under these categories. They're not technically a Pennsylvania municipal government. So a school district ID for like a teacher, administrator, whatnot, would not be acceptable because it does not fall under the strict parameters of the law. Again, something to keep in mind. Most of those folks probably will be showing driver's licenses, but just something to to keep in mind. I don't know if you saw the Secretary of the Commonwealth did sort of a I guess you'd call it like a press conference or something like that at one of these facilities where she said, you can simply, the facility can just simply print it out even on 8.5 by 11 paper as long as it says name of the resident, photo, and an expiration date. So again, I will be contacting those places just so they understand that service that they can provide for their residents. Sort of a thumbnail sketch. If you've ever voted absentee, you know it's a two-step process in Pennsylvania. First step is you have to complete an application for an absentee ballot. Submit it with my office. We make sure you're registered, all that kind of stuff, then we send you a ballot. Okay. the application form for an absentee ballot is undergoing a change. And while this change hasn't been finalized, it more or less is going to have a place now where it asks the voter for the driver's license or PennDOT photo ID number, an 8-digit number, or the last 4 digits of that voter's social security number. So when they submit that application, we will run that information through the statewide voter database, and that will be, it's not photo ID that's being proved, it's proof of ID is what it's called in the legislation. And the driver's license number or last 4 digits of the social is considered proof of ID for absentee purposes, and if that matches up, the ballot will be counted.
So you would check the expiration dates at your office then?
I will say this, the Department of State, in the few months since this law was enacted, have done some measures which have made it easier for individuals to get these free voting-only non-drivers IDs, in the sense that if you had a driver's license since 1990, you don't have one anymore, but you had one since 1990, it's as simple as going into the place and you can get one for free. You don't have to show any other identification. You just say, here is who I am, and they're able to find you on the system and generate an ID for you. That's a lot easier than it looked at first blush when the law was passed. So I think that the Department of State are really trying to make this easier on folks, because initially it looked like everybody has to come in with a race seal birth certificate and 2 forms of proof of who you are and stuff like that. And honestly, for some folks who were born in another state and never had a driver's license or photo ID in here in Pennsylvania, it's still as rigorous as that.
Yes, it is.
But for folks who were born in Pennsylvania, and especially if you had a driver's license or photo ID at one point in Pennsylvania, it is much more easier to get that free ID than it looked like initially. I'm sorry,